bit. Some of you have asked, what Clinic 356? What does that mean? What's the relevance of that? And I wanted to share just a little bit of that with you. It'll take me like 10 minutes, and then we're going to get on to but I want to share just a little bit of that with you. Clinic 356 is actually something that is put on by a group that my family and I have just started recently called Project 356. And it was really interesting because I don't know, for those of you who are avid Bible readers, I don't know if you ever had this happen, but from time to time, as I get to know the Lord more and read, there's every now and then that something just jumps out of here and grabs me. It just kind of comes up and slaps me in the face. And that happened on January the 1st of this year, and it was interesting to see how it all went down. But we were really praying through some things and some issues, and just kind of needing some guidance. And our church was about to go through this like 21-day fast, which I hate the word fast. I love food. And so anyway, it wasn't a complete fast. It was kind of fast this or this thing or that thing. But we participated in that. But on January 1st, it was kind of interesting. I was reading through my Bible in the morning before we were getting into the day, and the scripture just jumped out at him. It's like I got goosebumps, and I don't cry, okay? I do not cry, all right? I'm a man, men don't cry, but I cry, okay? That day I cried. And I don't know what it was other than I could figure out that it was the Holy Spirit. and I hit this scripture because, we've been forgot. Give us some answers on this, right here, this stuff that we're praying through. And it just jumped out at me, and it stuck with me for months, all right? And it was Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6, and this is what it says. You've heard it before, I'm sure, if you've been to church at all. And it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He'll make your path straight." All right. Some versions say He will trust in the Lord with all your heart, or acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He will direct your paths. Excuse me. Yeah. And so, but what got me about it, hit me, is this word "all." In all, because we had this joke with our kids at school. We'll ask them, we'll say, "Hey, we looked up the word all on the dictionary. You know what it means?" And they'll say, "What?" It means all. Right? And I know it's stupid, but for some reason they think it's funny. All right. And now we've gotten to where we'll go, "Hey, y'all know what all means?" And they'll go, "All." All right. And so, but we started doing that just because they weren't all clapping when they were supposed to clap, or they weren't all doing whatever they were supposed to do. And anyway, it was kind of funny because we've been doing that, and all of a sudden it just hit me because we've been doing that in school. It's like, "Oh, trust with all your heart." You think about that, that means like every piece of it, all right? And so Coach Hill always tells them, he always says to the kids, he goes, "What's all minus one?" And they go, "Some," all right? So it's talking about all, every piece of it, And then we read on in here and it says, not only trust in Him with all of your heart, but in all your ways acknowledge Him. I started thinking about that. I was going, all my ways. What is all my ways? And so I started looking at my life and I'm going, okay, well, I got this little element over here. I'm a coach, I'm a husband, I'm a father. I have some other elements that are in there as well. And it was interesting because he was showing me as I was looking at this that He really wanted all of me, every piece, not some, not all minus one, not just not the majority, or not 90% of it. He wanted all. And it was really interesting because we kept seeking. And trying to figure out, okay, God, what all of me? What is that one? What does that mean? All. And He said, "You know what? I want to be at the center of your coaching. I want to be at the center of your family. I want to be at the center of all these other little pieces, and I don't want you to compromise on those things. I want to be involved in them." And after this 21-day fast, we felt like He was leading us to start this organization called Project 356. Which is based on Proverbs 356. All right, it's basically all the pieces of us. It's our family, it's our coaching, it's our other elements of what we do, and trying to use that to reach out to other people. And so there are elements of Project 356 that can serve coaches. This is one of them. All right, there are elements that can serve athletes. We started branching out and working with other athletes in the 100% Round Rock Christian Academy, but we've had some other athletes that come and say, "Well, can you work with me on this and work with me on that?" there's some of these other elements that I haven't even gotten into that we've started to be able to say, okay, we're going to just put you at the center, see what you do. And it's really interesting. But we want, as a family, to be able to say, okay, we've given all. We've put all our stock, in this God thing, and not just something we do on occasion, And so, anyway, so when you see Clinic 356, that's kind of where it comes from, all right, Project 356. There are cards that we put in your packets, we do have a website that kind of talks about different things that we do and help athletes and help different people with, and that's our desire. All right, we want to be available to people to lead them, instruct them, and help build what we would call champions for Brice. So anyway, that being said, so if you have an opportunity, please look that up on the website. We'd love to engage with you, and we do have a Facebook page that you could dial in and like. We'll be your friend, I promise. So, I want to introduce this individual to you, and I'll tell you what's fun. I love seeing this. I think my first year of coaching was 1999. My first year as a head coach was the year 2000. And right about that area, there was a team in El Paso called Jesus Chapel. And Jesus, they were something. As a matter of fact, that year, I don't remember exactly how many years running, but there was a few years, those 2 years for sure. I remember that they had won a TAP state championship, and I believe they also they matched up with the UIL state champion and won there too. So they were stout. There was a young man that was playing for them at that time. His name was Brice Helton, and he was something to watch on the football field and on the track. And his father was a coach at El Paso Jesus Chapel at that time. Then a few years down the road, 4 or 5 years down the road, all of a sudden we start seeing this name pop up again. And now it was as a coach, and I mean, so many of us in the 6-man, especially on the private school end of it, we're going, oh great, another Helton that we had to come up and coach against, and that is said out of the utmost respect because Brice has made an outstanding. He is, and I'll tell you this, he has not tried to make a name for himself. He has tried to be a God-honoring coach the whole way, but along the way, God has blessed him by giving him a great reputation. And Brice spent much of his career in Dallas at the Covenant School, has recently made a change to come over to Live Oak Classical, who just won a state championship. He is now the defensive coordinator over there. Brice has how many state championships? Yes, 3. As a coach, 3 state championships. How many as the player? 4. Wow. Okay. So he is no stranger to championship caliber football. And let me just tell you what, quality, godly man. So if you would please give it up for Mr. Brice Helton.
First of all, I just want to say thank you to Jeremy and the staff for bringing me in. It's an honor to be here. First of all, it's an honor to be in the 6-man coaching fraternity. It means even more to me now that I spent a season in 11-man, and now I'm back in 6-man. But also just to be here at the clinic and speak and be with you guys. Sorry I'm late. For what he just said, football, 6-man football is something that's been a part of my life since I was born. To say that though, track and field has been the exact same. And so this morning was my daughter's first track meet. And actually it was in Temple, so it kind of worked out great. She just finished her 4x1, so I was able to get in the car, head down here, but I wasn't going to miss that opportunity. To spend all this time for the last 12 years with young men and building into them, to miss my daughter's first meet wouldn't line up with my core, with what I coach and what I'm about. What's kind of funny is regardless of whenever I'm asked to talk, no one's asked me or ever had to screen what I've said, so pretty much it always ends up being less about what they've asked me to speak about, which stays defense. We'll open up and talk about that in a minute. But we're going to start kind of where, in coming to clinics and listening to X's and O's, especially in 6-man, it's not as important as a few other things. And if these other things are missing, it doesn't matter what you run, it's not going to work. And so, like you said, I got to experience a lot of this as a player. Got to see a lot of my dad's players back when I was in junior high and elementary and saw some things there, and getting to spend that much time there in that program, and then now having been in coaching as long as I have, you just see things now that are far more important than state championships and wins or anything else like that, things that will fade away. You could have just introduced me as I've taught Vance Jones everything that he knows, but I'm kidding. For guys that don't know Vance Jones, it's like asking like George Strait or some of the original country guys to come back to the country music wars and everything now, like where it's all not country and pop and everything. But if they knew who Vance Jones was, this whole side of the state should be packed in here right now. But I just told him I'm kind of the appetizer for him to come up and warm the crowd up for what's about to happen next. So over the last few years, not just what makes a good coach, but what makes a good six-man coach, because it's different. And having been an 11-man now, I can say that it's a complete different game. So for the majority of people in the room, usually they're 11-man guys coming to six-man, and they'll recognize right away that six-man is different. Having always been in the six-man world and going to 11-man and being bored for about 5 months, I can tell you it is a different game. Okay, really, just I kept like expecting something to happen, and even when a touchdown gets scored, just kind of like standing around. And the guys, my seniors, had been playing six-man their entire life. That we kind of transitioned a year early. They kind of came off the field that first game, and they're like, "Coach, this is so different. I'm in this little area, and I'm responsible for so little ground." And they had a huge adjustment trying to figure out what that meant to stay in certain places, and that they didn't have to cover 40 yards at a time. But I started thinking more about what is a six-man coach, what makes a good six-man coach. Because there's a lot of guys that are good six-man coaches that have never won a state championship. So what is it that really makes it? One thing that stood out to me the most is there was a young man, usually where I was at Covenant, if I heard about the junior high players, I wouldn't as involved in the junior high program because I hired coaches that I could hire coaches that I could trust to run the whole program. So I was involved, but I wasn't in the day-to-day. So usually if I heard a kid's name quickly, it was because they were a stud athlete that they were telling me about, or it was because there's a kid having issues. Well, this kid that I heard about was one that was having issues. He would cuss at a teacher in class. He was saying things to girls he wouldn't. He was just that type of kid. The problem was he was a good leader. And so the fear there amongst the teachers, the administrators, the other people was that this guy was going to grow up and just kind of lead our school in the opposite direction. So I started getting involved with him heavily during his 8th grade year and having lots of conversations with him, pulling him aside, not just when he was in trouble, just random lunches. He made a pretty quick transition his freshman and sophomore year to where in his junior and senior year, he turned out to be our best quarterback we ever had. But that's not the point. The point was as an individual, he became a true leader for our team. In character, in his walk with God, I got to play a small role in that process. It was just really neat. Just giving him scripture. He always texted me the night before a game, and he dealt with anxiety a lot in addition to that. And so in calming him down and kind of just speaking truth into his life there and some things that he was able to grasp onto. Fast forward to college, he went to A&M, and the same thing came up. Anxiety over big exams. He was going kind of pre-dental route. And still, that relationship continued into college. And so to kind of finish that part, came back from Nashville last week where he just had his wedding. Got to go to the rehearsal dinner and speak there. And also got to do his premarital counseling for the last 6 months. And so it's something that has come from a little 8th grade punk who nobody wanted to deal with, nobody wanted to talk to, he didn't respect anybody, to 10, 11 years later, however long it's been, doing the premarital counseling with his now wife and him. And what's neat about that whole thing is that to see that journey that he took, that the Lord blessed everybody to be able to see something happen a little bit quicker than it does for others. Last summer we moved to Waco, and that family that we're close to had given us his old bunk beds. And we set the bunk beds up in the new house, and we were out unpacking, and the girls come running out and hollering at me to come back in. They needed to show me something in the bunk beds, which I thought was odd. So I come back in, and I look, and I don't see anything. And they're like, no, you had to like get down in the first bunk. So I crawled down the first bunk, laid on my back, looked up at the second bunk, and there was stapled Philippians 4, which is do not be anxious about anything. I'm talking about guarding your minds and guarding your hearts. The scripture that I had given Jay 6, 7 years prior to that. And so here now my kids have bunk beds with scriptures pasted to them from a player that I had been working with for years. And so that's why I do what I do. That's why I'm in coaching. And for me, I've had the chance of seeing players in El Paso go on and lead crazy lives and transition and come back and still be at the school when they were able to come back and talk to my dad and thank them and tell them, hey, when I was in high school, I wasn't living for the Lord, I didn't care about it, but the seeds of truth that you guys planted, they finally came to fruition down the road. And just to get to see that as a young man, as a player, realizing, wow, so you don't give up on people, so you continue to speak truth, you continue, and really that's only our only responsibility. It's all we control, is to plant and water, plant and water, plant and water, and it's up to the Lord to do the rest. And I've gotten, and for all those cases where those guys over the 12 years, where I still got ones that are living for themselves and are all over the place, the Lord's been faithful and has allowed me to see these cases like this one, where it's like, look, be faithful in little things every day. And so that's part of what makes a six-man coach. You've got to be faithful in the little things. You've got to work on and realize that the majority of the guys that we've got aren't going to go play Division I football. It's a lot of time you're going to waste for 4 years for guys that will never touch the sport again. So what's the point? What are you doing as a coach that's instilling something in them long term that they're going to be able to use 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road? And in texting with Jake this week, they're back from their honeymoon. Now it's gone completely around when I have a former coach that has fallen off the wagon, has gotten a divorce, has had some really difficult things happen in his life that he's chosen to go through and do. And now, Jake was one of his players, and now he's texting me about, well, I'm going to reach out to him. At least maybe he'll listen to me since I'm not a coach, and since I was one of his players. And so here it is. So now it's the player now going to go minister to a former coach, which is rare, and I hope never happens again. But to see that because of the work that was done, you helped create something there with the Lord's help. So I just want to encourage you with that we could sit all day in this room and draw stuff up, which I'm not sure what this formation is on the board right now. Not sure what's been going on this morning. Maybe it's the noon advanced part. But we could do this all day long. But at the end of the day, it's not going to make you any better as a coach. Okay? Not unless a few of those other ingredients are there first. And certainly we can talk about things that'll make it easier and give you some keys there, or not, but we'll go from there. So to sum that up, there's a quote by Brad McCoy, who's Colt McCoy's dad, and he came to speak at our school a few years ago. And he said, don't prepare the path for the child, prepare the child for the path. I thought that was one of the best quotes for a coach as we're going through a season. Don't go out and look for the easiest teams to play. You're preparing the schedule for them. Go out and prepare and pick the hardest teams to find. Okay? Coach Hudgens goes and puts Richland Springs on his calendar, on his schedule last year. He's either doing one of two things. He's trying to get fired because he wants to, submit his players to personal abuse, or he's trying to make them better. He's trying to get them to realize there's something else going on out here that you're not aware of. It's similar to when we went to see Vance Jones out in Garden City 5-6 years ago with that kid I just told you about. We drove all the way out there. We knew going out there, we were going out there for 2 quarters of football. We drove from Dallas to Garden City to have that experience for our kids. We were just making it to play halftime, and I think technically there was a kickoff. I think it was by just mercy of Vance. Maybe a penalty or something that pushed something over that allowed time to run off, and we were able to get a kickoff in the 3rd quarter and say that we technically made it. But we did that for a reason. I don't even remember the score. It's probably 56-0 or something. But that wasn't the point. I wasn't going to go and stay in Dallas and schedule one of the 52 homeschool groups, or and if you're a homeschool guy, not you. Some of the ones that we're used to experiencing up in the Dallas area were not the best. And you know that. You had to play someone too. So we were always trying to get further out and get better competition. But we weren't going to, as coaches, pad stats and make our schedule easier so that we could show up to an all-state meeting and say, brag about a kid that had 3,000 rushing yards. Well, where'd you go in playoffs? Well, we were out the first round, so there you go. So prepare your schedules in a way that's going to challenge you guys. More of my boys talk about that Garden City loss than any playoff win or state championship loss or anything else. They will talk to me all day long about Garden City and how bad they got beat and what they learned in that game. Or Throckmorton, or Calvert, or Trinidad, or whoever it is. They want to talk about those games they can't remember the games that they won 50-0. And as a coach, I can't either half the time. Okay? So challenge your players. They're capable of doing a lot more, even in today's culture, which is a challenge. I've even seen just in the last 12 years how much things have changed, where if it's not fun right away and they have to work hard, they're going to quit. I'm okay with that. But it's going to take more out of you as a coach to kind of push them and get to that point. And the other side of this, which is very difficult, is the parents. Is that you're going to try to prepare the child for the path, and they're trying to go out there with their steamrollers, making a 6-lane tollway and smooth it out for them. Often my conflict comes with those parents. Is that, look, your baby is really capable of more. Trust me. No, and that really, and as you know, as you laugh, is the struggle with private school. Is that the parents are highly invested, and they often don't think that their babies are capable of more. So I challenge you to hold your ground. Let 5, 10, 12 years go down the road where you start to see that payoff, where you realize that doing the right thing early and front when it's harder is always going to be better in the long run. So I guess with that, we'll start talking about defense. That's a natural segue. All right. Defense. So kind of broke this up a few different ways. Ultimately, you have to figure out as a philosophy, what are you about? Because there's multiple ways, multiple formations in 6-man. Pretty much, you dream it, you can do it. So how are you going to guide your team week in, week out when you see the amount of formations that you do? So ultimately, you've got to sell out and figure out what you're committed to. What we're committed to, regardless of what you run, I don't care if you put 5 wide receivers or 5 linemen or what you decide to do, we're always going to put pressure on the ball. There's a few things. Hit that first one. First one is here. All right. So pressure versus coverage. And that's kind of two things to think about, because you can press and have plenty of pressure on ball while covering. What I mean by this is, if you looked at the vast end of the spectrum there with like a 5-1 defense, where all 5 are going, you're just hanging one back, or one of the safest things in like a spread would be a 1-2-3. So in that spectrum, where are you going to fall as a coach? Sometimes, rarely, I'd probably count on one hand how many times we put all 6 guys on line and just put all 6. Usually that happens out of frustration and if I'm playing Dawn or something. But where do you fall? And this is a big question before you get into any scheme or any drawing up anything, is you've got to figure this question out, is what are you committed to? Are you going to put pressure on the ball, or are you going to sit back and wait? And why this is so important is, look, if your guy is going to miss one-on-one, where would you like for that to happen? Would you like for it to happen at the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage, or after the first down marker? Because if he's going to miss, he's going to miss. So think through, if you don't put pressure on ball, what does that equal, or what does that result in? First of all, if you don't put pressure on ball, the ball has opportunities to get up to higher speeds. Okay? So no pressure means he can go where he wants. The ball goes from somehow receiving the ball, he's a pitch, a handoff, going from standing still to full speed. Where do you want to find the guy when you have to tackle him? Where would you like your players to get them? Okay? If you want the guy at full speed, then you got to sit back and wait, which is what a lot of people think is the safe way to go. Okay? For us, we want to catch that guy from standing still to being his first few takeoff steps, which means we better put pressure on the ball to get there. Okay? The second thing on that would be open field. You really want to have to tackle a guy in the open field. If you don't pressure, you're going to give time for the play to develop, which means 40 yards wide and oftentimes 40 to 50 yards deep if it's in the spread especially. So where in that spectrum do you want to tackle a guy? Open field, or where he's tighter, closer back to the point of origin there where everything's started? Okay, again, you want to sit back and wait. You better be ready to make a lot of open field tackles. And then where's your help? Same thing, goes really well, or it goes closely with that first and second one. If you want help, then you don't need to let the play develop and drag your players 40 yards down the field or 40 yards out. So if you're going to pressure, you're going to have more help close by. Okay? So adding all those things up, if you're going to pressure on the ball, statistically, you're going to have better odds on all those spectrums we just talked about. Okay? Now, why more 6-man coaches don't do it, I don't know. They would rather sit back and play safe, but that's my question to you, is are you really playing it safe? Or are you really just opening it up for the offense to run all around you in open space? Okay? So again, if your guy is going to miss an open field tackle, if he's going to miss, if you sit back and wait, it's going to happen after the first down or 10 yards down the field. All he needs is 4 to 5 yards of play. Or if he misses in our system, he's going to miss up front when the guy's going the slowest, where he has an opportunity to recover, or he's got more defensive help around him to help him out. Okay. So that's kind of where we sit. So doesn't matter the formation, doesn't matter the personnel, we're committed to putting pressure on ball. Now, depending on the team you're playing, you might have to adjust by the number of guys you're sending. Okay. If you're going to play Mike Reed's team from a few years ago at Throckmorton, where he's got a 6'4" receiver and can have a quarterback to run circles around you, you might have to consider where that pressure comes from, how many guys you sit. Okay, so it depends. Yes, it does depend on who you're playing, but ultimately this doesn't change. Okay. All right. So if you go to that next one, just hit the next 4 if you would. Okay. So zone versus man, risk versus reward. Everything we just talked about was a lot of times you're thinking you're risking more by putting pressure on ball, which means if you sit back and wait. My challenge is the exact opposite. If you sit back and wait, you're actually risking more by sitting back in zone coverage and waiting, putting more guys back. Okay. A few defensive drills that help us with this. This has changed over the years. Since I first started coaching till now, I can count usually on 1 or 2 fingers how many in-tight teams we play per season now. Seems like the majority has gone all spread. That's not always the case, but at least certainly the last 6 or 7 years. So that has affected our practice time. Has practice affected the drills that we do in practice? Because there's no point in lining up in a lot of 2-on-2, 3-on-3 in tight situations if you're going to see 5 spread teams for the next 5 weeks. So a lot of our practices have been changed because of what other teams are running. So a lot of what we're doing for defensive drills is going to be pursuit. We're working on angles, open field, using both sidelines as that angle or as that extra helper. That's the majority of everything that we do defensively drill-wise in practice. We have some sort of pursuit to it. We don't just do a line up and static, just head-to-head or anything like that, or do a lot of the in-tight work. We'll do that earlier on in the season. We'll line up inside as the guys are kind of getting more familiar with everything. But really, by the time we get to playoffs, we get into spread defense, drills. All we're doing is spread pursuit, usually. Okay? So spread pursuit, we've changed it up. We do everything from 1 up back, 2 up backs. We'll throw in making the center live. A lot of times it turns out to be a 4-on-4. We just delete the receivers. We put a 4-man front up there, whether or not we're in a 2-2. In a 4-2, we just leave our safeties off, or we have a 3-3. So in that situation, it would look like a 3-1 on a 4-man offense. So we do a lot of pursuit. The other thing we try to do is look for opportunities to add competition to that. So it's throughout the season, and some years we split them up and they kept the same teams all year. Sometimes we just change it up in the practice. But adding some level of competition in practice to those drills has helped us. One, to keep the intensity and the focus. Because if you'll notice, a lot of times in one-on-one, in practice, for whatever reason, who wins the majority of the time? Spread. Offense, right? Yeah. To the point where you could go 10 guys in a row, and some of them never actually touch the other guy. And it's the most frustrating thing in the world. Okay, so we've tried to figure out, okay, we've got to come up with incentives for these guys to actually try. With that much open space, if we're going to work on it, we've got to simulate game speeds. And that's the best way of adding some level of competition to it. We'll talk about tackling. I guess we can do that now. We've changed tackling, which in fact we laughed during spring drills. We didn't suit up or get pads or anything, but any kind of trying to walk through some of the tackling stuff you can do now. You don't have to have helmet, shoulder pads to do. I would get yelled at. I would have gotten yelled at for doing things I'm teaching my players to do right now, which is still, while I know it's right, it's just still, every time it comes out of my mouth, I kind of like look over at the other coaches and I'm like, I can't believe I just said that. My dad I'd be running right now if my dad was here. But it is a safer way, and since if you watched any of the Seahawks highlight films, it works. I mean, and it makes sense. The guys can play rugby without getting a concussion every week with no helmet on. There's got to be something to it. So for those of you who are familiar, yes, we have switched over to which is for up there, the Hawk roll tackle and USA football and all of that, which I've been doing it for I just finished the second season of doing that completely. last year when I walked into Live Oak, I mean, the transition's hard enough alone when you've got juniors and seniors that have been doing some things certain ways, and so I couldn't pull up game film that would show any of my seniors doing it. That would mean if they did it, it was more accident than it was really by purpose. But it makes sense. If you don't know what it is, look into it. But like I said, it is the opposite of what we were told, especially when it comes to putting your head in front of the runner instead of going through the shoulder, and his head's on the back now. And again, even just training my guys, sometimes I just won't catch it, or I'll go to correct them and then realize that they did it right, and I'm still in the old method. So when it comes to tackling, we obviously combine all of that into our pursuit drills. So we don't have to necessarily do, outside that first 2 weeks, where especially with those young guys, we're not doing a separate tackling drill specifically just to teach technique. We're infusing that into everything to speed up time, and I mean, obviously you're putting it all together. So after those 2 weeks, we won't be breaking them all up.
Hey, Brice,
Yep.
excuse me, there's a video going online, there's a Seattle Seahawks tackling video. We started it 2 years ago too, we got hold of that video. Just go online, you can download it, and it's great.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's about, there's one that's like 4 minutes, and I think one that's like 12 minutes.
Yeah.
But it even shows the progression there with the drills that can teach each step. And ultimately, that's also what, I mean, USA football is encapsulated now and has brought in. The last thing I throw in here is coverage. We, naturally, anytime we're working on offense in our practice, we work on coverage. So one-on-one, one-on-two, any man, zone, we're working all of it. My guys always, I blame basketball, my guys always want to play man, and they hate zone. They cannot understand the concept of splitting the difference between two guys in your zone, staying home, and staying as deep as the deepest man. And so they always end up, and this happened a lot in spring balls, you'll end up with 3 guys in one zone and like 4 open receivers, and just another knock at 11. That's a lot of why we don't play a lot of zone when it comes to coverage. And you see this at the NFL level, you see this at collegiate level, which they can make their arguments all they want, but when you've got 11 guys on defense, and you can still throw a ball to a wide open receiver when there are 4 or 5 guys right around them, that will never happen with us. One, we can't waste 4 or 5 guys in 6-minute football. But even when it does happen, I still don't get why you're going to sit back and, I mean, it's one thing to play a zone and play it right, okay? But my pet peeve there is to throw a ball to a wide open guy when there's 3 guys guarding nobody. I would rather have put 3 guys sprinting to put pressure on the quarterback, because why not? They're not doing anything back there anyway. And that was my frustration with 11 man, because I was thinking, great, we have 11 guys. That means I can blitz like 8 now at least. And the defensive coordinator is like, no, we got to play cover 2. No, you got to do that. I'm like, no, you don't have to, especially not with the teams that we're playing. In division, back then there was 3 or division, I can't remember how many division. We were in the smallest division of 11 men in taps, Division 4. And it's like, no, outside of Cedar Trinity, like Trinity Cedar Hill, who we can't hang with anyway, like we can play almost man up on everybody here and blitz literally everybody, and they wouldn't know what to do. He never did, believe me. All right, so go to the next one. So these are a few of the keys of our defense specifically. That some of these I just threw on there because I feel like I had to, but starting with the first one. So pressure on ball. I was laughing with McAvoy, and he already said it. So POB, I think I've heard that word or acronym a million times in my life. Anytime my dad still comes to most of our games. So when I was at Covenant, he actually helped. Now he's just more of a fan. But if he's not at a game, and as soon as he wants to know what the score was, and then this is always his first question: did you have pressure on ball? Or he came out to our scrimmage last year at your place, Matt, and I can't remember who all was there. Malcolm, Abbott, you guys, and us. And everyone, all the fans around here, he's at the end, in the back of the end zone, watching where you can see our defensive end. Like during the scrimmage, he's like texting me, which I don't see until after it's over. But this is what he's texting me about. It's every time he cannot watch a football game without checking this, watching this, and complaining about this. So that's why, for me, this is where it's such a big deal. Is that it was one thing that's been up here, when you were at Central Texas and speaking at the clinic yet there, and saying it 2 years into coaching and a few years out of playing, but now having done 12 years of it, if you want to win beyond your games, you're going to have to put pressure on the ball. And pressure on the ball does not mean blind sprint pursuit. Okay? And so that's the other thing. A lot of times people are weary because you tell a kid to pursue the ball and he just flat runs in there and forgets that, as the guy goes by. So I get that hesitation of it. I mean, you've got to train your guys. And one game we had last year, it was against Calvert. And we had one of our best players go down the week before with a concussion. So he was slow. And so I basically told him, look, you have one job. Think basketball. You're going to keep the guy in front of you. You're going to shuffle. All you have to do, I don't even want you to touch him. Just keep him in front of you and just shadow him. If you ever get the chance to reach out and grab him, great, do it. Somehow we were able to stay, well, part of their spread back was out that game, but we were just able to stay with him. And he did a good job in his slowness of just getting here to a comfortable kind of distance to where he could apply enough pressure to make the guy make some quicker decisions without feeling like he could get around this kid, which he totally would have if he knew who he was. He was slow. All right, go to number 2. All right, so every one of our defensive positions has a primary and a secondary key, and then in some cases a third. But when we set up our D at the beginning of the year, and usually, again, within the first 2 weeks is about the last time I mention it, because at that point I expect them all to know it for the rest of the season. But we assign a primary key for every player, and then a secondary key for every player. This is critical when it comes into cornerbacks and safeties when you're playing an in-tight team, when nobody wants to take ownership of whose man it was. It's pretty simple if you've assigned their keys, because even if a guy missed his primary key, somebody else had him as a secondary key. So that's important. That's something that was different for me coming in from being a head coach, being just a defensive coordinator, and kind of seeing how different teams work practices. And I'm used to slowing it down to snail pace, teaching even the seniors which way to open up, which way to take a step, and just building quickly every year, just hitting the reset button and starting. We didn't do that this year, so it took a little bit longer to get some of the keys and actually got into some scrimmages where they're still trying to figure out who their keys are. And even some of that terminology for them was new. But that for us is huge. So after pressure on ball, I'm going to ask who your keys are. If they know who their keys are and they're responsible, who they're responsible for, it's a whole lot easier to figure out whose responsibility it was in that game, and then more importantly, how to correct it for the next play. Okay. The first thing we get into before that first game we talked to them about is getting blocked is not an excuse. It's not okay. If we say what happened, where you went, do not ever respond to us with "I got blocked." That's the whole point of the offensive line. They're going to block. So we have an expectation that they're going to shed their block. We again drill this. The drills that we set up for this work on getting off the block, whether that's a swim technique, whichever one we do, we're going to work through that. But that's critically important for us. And with as much pressure we're going to put, they've got to shed the block and they've got to do it quickly. As you know, with the veer, whatever they would be running, if they're with those traps, it doesn't take a long time. So they could shed their block, but if it took them a second to shed their block, it's too late. Okay, especially if you're playing that guy. Okay, so you've got to do it quickly. It's not something that after 5 seconds the guy finally just gave up and let you go. Okay, you've got to shed the block quickly. Eyes through the thighs is a slogan, is a quote that you're going to hear through the heads-up tackling. It's basically the point of contact with the shoulder through the thigh, but where you should be focusing at all times. And so that has been just a phrase that we continue to use every day in practice, every game. And you can see it right away. If you'll stand in position during your tackling drills, at first you'll need to be able to where you just see his eyes. I can do it now where I can see the back of the kid's helmet and know whether or not he had his eyes through his thighs. But to start off with, be on the front side, and you can see where that kid is looking. And if he's, oftentimes they're looking at their head and their shoulder pads. And that's why they're going to lose them every time. Even the smallest, most inexperienced kid can get close to making that tackle if his eyes are through the thighs and focused in the right place. We had a kid do it during spring balls. We're working through this part of it. Here comes, older seasoned athlete, and you just expect him to just run circles around this little freshman, and the freshman just comes up, does what he's told, and he slaps the guy on the hip and runs through him just like he's supposed to. And everyone's kind of like saying, how did that just happen? Well, he actually did what he was taught to do. And so at first I was a little hesitant, but now that some of these guys are kind of grasping it, definitely makes sense. This is the one I just kind of threw out there. I've got to figure out a better way to teach this and to speak about this. Because don't get beat deep and be as deep as the deepest guy evidently means something completely different to my players than it does to me. Because if somebody's as deep if I'm as deep as they are, it means I am parallel with them down the field. And I'll scream this 100 times in a season, and there will be a guy 7 yards behind them, and they won't know what's wrong. Or they won't get thrown to, so they don't get exposed, and I'll get on to them for not being as deep as the deepest guy. Well, no, they can't understand. And part of it is because they'll get on to if they're camping out back there and not helping on run support. So I get that aspect. But don't get beat deep. You have a better, find me afterwards if you have a better way to say that. I told you this about zone. I've got a kid that's stupid smart, and anytime I send him into a two-man zone with safeties deep, he just kind of like freezes, and you can see like he slowly like comes down. I'm like, I don't want to hear it. Like, just do it. And he's like, but what if they put 3 in my zone? Then you still go by the same rules. As deep as the deepest one, split the 3. And it's like, they can't get it. I don't get it. But anyway, don't get beat deep. That's something that you would think would be elementary as a safety, that if a guy's behind you, you should probably be with them. But you could pull up film from the state game right now and find a play there. One of my best safeties lets a guy go 7 yards deep in the end zone, and it's the kid I'm telling you about, pull him off. He's like, oh, I thought that guy, he was over on the other side of the field, and you didn't have to worry about him because he wasn't in your zone. So it kills me. But all right, go ahead. All right, so this is, first of all, I should have paused this earlier. We'll talk about a few specifics here, but a lot of times in this, I think it was 4 years ago, where I kind of broke this whole thing down. I kind of said after that, if you wanted me to break it down again, you kind of have to come up, sit by the fire, and have some scotch or Dr. Pepper, whatever your choice is, like Coach Hutchins did a few years ago. So I'm more than glad to share and talk, answer any questions you've got about any defense. Back when we were playing Coach Hutchins, our simple man or 2-2-2 zone defense would not cut it. So I blame him and thank him, because a lot of what we did is just what I did as a player. And so over time, having to develop things, when you don't have the athletes in these positions, which you don't always have, you've got to try to come up with a better way to put your players in position to make plays. And after playing his teams, I didn't feel like I was, as a coach, was putting my guys in the best positions to do that. And so in playing him and going through that, trying to figure out how do I take spread defense, which can mean a numerous amount of things. However many, there's got to be some way to guide us through spread defense when literally you can put whatever formation out there you want. And so these 3 formations, base formations, are our 3 base looks pre-snap. Now, after going back to film, realizing pre-snap, we look a lot different depending on the players that we have in the game. Some coaches are like, oh, I didn't know you guys ran 2-3-1. Oh, I don't. My safety lined up in the middle of the field, and that's where it is. So you always have that aspect of it where you kind of stop and pause. You're like, wait, what are we in right here? Because I don't know what this is, and you try to decipher it based off what they do in the play, and I'm like, I still can't figure out what we were in. But all of our spread D will come from here. Why we did it this way is that when we call our spread packages, there are 3 kind of key distinctions. It's what we're in, what we're going to do, and who's going to do it. And so this would be whatever we line up in pre-snap, and then we have 4 base plays. And then out of those 4 base plays, I can interchange the personnel out of any 6 guys in the field. And so if you add that up, which I did at one point, my math is fuzzy now, but it gives you about over 70 different plays and different looks post-snap out of 3 base sets. Just by, if you want to send, let's pick on 33 right here. If we want to send 33, we can designate a few different things. We can, thank you. We can send all 3, we can send 2, or we can send 1. And so out of that right there, out of 33, that's 3 different plays. And where they're lining up from let's say it was the one where I blitzed 1. So the number for this right here, so 1, 2, and 3 are going. We can determine pre-snap if 1 and 3 are going, or 1 and 2 are going, or 2 and 3 are going, who's staying with up backs, or vice versa, which one of those 3 goes and puts pressure. Okay? So we do have a few kind of calls that will kill all that, where I ultimately tell the guys, you ultimately have to play football. And this is where you'll see it in practice. We saw it in spring. They'll live by the rules of the play. So whatever play was called, they'll do it. And then the ball will go right there and be like, with my man, coach. Like, okay, you've got to, at some point, you've got to develop players that know what they're doing. And so, yeah, so I always tell them, the play is where I'm telling you to go. And as you're going and doing that job, if something changes, then make a play. And that's what's hard about six-man or about spread, is that things change all the time. And so we found that this gave them the most flexibility in changing on the run while still having somebody cover them. Because what happens if one guy, if your defensive end changes responsibilities and 3 doesn't? So that's why we do all these drills. Whenever we do our 4-on-4 drills in practice, we line them up in these formations to try to give them every one of those opportunities to get to the point where one changed his responsibility once he got put on the other side of the ball, because this happened, and that guy knew it, and so he flipped the responsibilities with them and made the adjustment. Something that can't be done if it's a brand new play you're calling in a game. So one of ours is a basic read. We send all 3, and if the ball goes left, we have 2 guys that are going and 1 that stays. If it goes right, 2 guys go. And then out of that variation, we can do that, but pre-snap it or predetermine who it is. And there are some times where I will tell them, I don't care what happens, stay in this right here and run this. Send this one guy regardless. And that's usually based off of what I've seen the other coach calling or what's happening in the last few plays and expecting what's coming. So there is that part of it. But we really try to, I had a kid at Covenant that got to the point where he could not only run all this and know how to change it quickly, but he could actually call it, which was where we wanted. That's how familiar we wanted them to get with this, which after coming in last year with Coach Barker, after the first, like literally we worked on defense the first day because he's like, I need to get time, or you have a different system, and he kind of came off that first day, was kind of like looking at me, he's like, yeah, I don't know. This is what we used to do, and so you might. And I was like, just give me time. And even it took our kids a little bit longer, just again, because as seniors, if you've been running 1 or 2 different things your entire time coming in. But for us, it really is an easy way to change looks up and to change post-snap up without having to require our kids to know 100 different things. The worst thing that you can do in spread defense is stay static. If you do not change what you're doing, either it isn't going to work already, or it's certainly not going to continue to work. Okay, if you're playing a coach that knows anything about his spread offense, you have to change it up. Okay, as frequently as I would say, almost as frequently as the offense changes plays, you should think about doing that on the defensive side, especially if you're going to play offense. Okay, because he coaches all of that. Like if you see this guy, you're doing, and so all their offense is, what are you doing? And just do the opposite and beat you. So if you're just going to stand there and continue to send one guy and put no pressure on the ball, it's very easy. Okay? So from that is what we then had to come up with. We're going to show 4 and only send 2. We're going to show 3 and send 3. We're going to show 1 and send 3. So we were constantly trying to get his guys to slow down, to alter their timing somehow to give us an advantage in any way we could. And that goes back to philosophy on ball. I would rather slow their guys down and try to catch them at the beginning stages, at the genesis of that play, than let their timing and develop and let that kid get the ball 7 yards downfield going full speed. Okay? I had 0 guys in the 100, in the 200, or the 4x1 at state this year, or 4x2 at state this year, which was like a lot of our teams at Covenant. There was 1 year where I would say I had a sprinter. Okay? So we were having to figure out, we don't have a lot of speed. What are we going to do when we don't have speed? And so that was part of it too, is trying to catch them at the beginning of that play. Okay? Lastly on this, you can blitz a guy from any position, and that alters it as well. And so I could probably count on one hand how many times we did safety blitzes last year. But when we did, it worked because of this. Because we had sent, like, I don't know if it was a Calvert game or we've been primarily playing a 42 and a 33 the entire time and spread. And after desensitizing them to that, you can drop a guy back and send a safety out there that's man up on that receiver pretty easily and send him in. And that's what happened, was we completely caught him off guard. Our safety got like a 15-yard sack, which is crazy. You think the guy that's coming from the furthest away, this should never happen. But when the guys are tired, it's the same personnel, they're not used to it. And that's what I'm saying is you've got to come up with ways to change it up and throughout the game, so you don't necessarily do it right. And that's been the case too. Sometimes we've never had to get out of one of these formations or call more than 2 plays as a defense. And that's kind of the side. If it's working, then I'm not going to necessarily show all 70 plays in one game. We'll probably stick to about 6 defensive plays if we don't have to. Now, I only put spread D on here. I didn't put tight defense on there. For us, again, it goes back to pressure on ball. We're always going to put two defensive ends. No matter what formation in tight, we're always going to have 2 defensive ends that are pursuing from outside in that pursue. One kind of deviation there that we've been making probably the last 5 years since Mike Reed and Coach Jones and all these guys is with our left end. As they're in either the Jaybird or the veer, and all those trap blocks, and Coach Crawford have it too, but trying to come up with any way to slow down the traps and trying to get inside those traps and trying to plug holes and kind of changing it up. That's about the only time we'd ever bring a left end inside. But I mean, honestly, outside of trying to think Midland Trinity a few years ago, there's not a lot of teams that play the pro or the T offense, or at least that we've been playing. So we haven't had to worry about that one as much. It's mainly the J and the veer. But again, for us, on those, putting pressure on ball and putting pressure in places that aren't normally consistent. If you're playing a team that has been playing Jaybird all year long, watch all those game films and see what kind of defense have been put up against them. What have they not seen yet? Have they seen pressure in this place, in the whole A or B? Or find that out. Okay? If nothing else, make the coach call a timeout and adjust. But, I mean, again, when you run into the better coaches, they've already been practicing for all that in practice every single week, regardless of who they're playing, just in case. The majority of you guys, though, won't have to worry about playing them all the time. Okay? As 2 of them are sitting in this room, and Coach Reed is now playing 11 man, coaching 11 man, so you don't have to worry about him. But they'll practice all the scenarios in practice. They'll show a 2-man front, a 3-man front, a 4-man front, and it doesn't matter what I play as a defense playing in that week. He's still practicing for the next week and beyond, and in the event where I do come and decide to do something different. And so that's a little bit on tight for me. You can hit that last one. I'll say this. So for me, moving last year, we were I was at Covenant for 11 years. When I first got there, they'd have a JV season. It was our first year in varsity when I got there. And after 11 years, grew up with the school. I got engaged, got married, had 3 kids while I was there. We went to 11-man, which we started that before the TAPS evolution of uncapping it. And so looking back, I don't know if that would have happened had TAPS made their shift before we did. But regardless, kind of getting back to where I started this whole thing, we finally decided to get out of Dallas. We've been wanting to get out of town. We have 3 little girls living right in the heart of Dallas, North Dallas, and realizing that after seeing all these boys grow up for so long, that the way life was going, the speed, that we wanted something different. We'd always talked about not living in Dallas before we were married. And so after looking at different places, Waco was kind of the one that was closest to both of our families in the Metroplex. The 6-man aspect was a bonus, especially after coming off 11-man. But for us, and that's the other part too, guys, when it comes down to, I mean, I went from being a head coach, athletic director, interim head of school while I was there for a short time, to being an assistant AD, being a defensive coordinator, but being at home every day at 4:30 with my girls because we practice in the mornings. I shouldn't probably, is anyone from out here? Didn't go to a single varsity girls game this year for basketball, which I felt really bad about. But my life for the last 11 years have been at the gym 2 or 3 nights a week for all of basketball, all soccer games and all that. And so at some point, you might have to put pause on your ambitions or what you want to do or coaching world and all that, and it's going to be okay. After we went to 11 man, I'm kind of like standing there on the sideline like that year, literally bored. And like I told you earlier, trying to figure out, okay, I have the philosophy of coaching, so it can still apply to 11 man. Just at some point would like to maybe go back to what I know and what is more comfortable and more at home. So the move for us was family first. And I remember seeing this back, I want to say it was 01, 02, where another coach that had been a head coach that was well respected took a short break, took 3 or 4 or 5 years off, went back to school, possibly maybe work on his master's, and then reemerged years later. Still has not been the head football coach. He has finally become the AD. But it's guys like that you look to and you look at and talk to and realize that guys like that get it. They've been in it long enough. He's willing to step back, help out where he can, but make important decisions for his family first. Which, when seeing examples like that in the 6-man community, makes it easy to follow. So being in Waco, we absolutely love where we live. We live outside of town, drive about 15 miles into town every day, get to coach 6-man football. And that was the one big difference about being a defensive coordinator only this year, was you got to coach a lot more one-on-one in games, and I got to make a lot more in-game adjustments, which being OC and DC, is just hard to do. You're always on to the next play. So for those that can, if you have a staff, I would say train them up, try to release one side of the ball if you can, if you're a head coach, if you can get to that point where, for me, as a head coach, it was always more about trust and actually, letting something go, letting a piece go. Even being a defensive coordinator, this year on the sideline was sometimes tough, but trusting Jordan, it's his offense, and knowing that I've got to get the coach guys up on defense. But it's okay to let some of that go. But ultimately, remember that those kids, like this was told me when I first started coaching, you're always going to leave a group of seniors behind, regardless of the reason. Whether it's because you got fired, because you chose to leave, because you retired, or you died. You're always going to leave one class of seniors behind. Okay? So what do I say? Well, knowing that those guys are going to go off and go on, as long as you were responsible for what you were called to do, you'll still see them and they'll check in with you, and that's awesome. But your family is with you forever. And you have them forever. And how much of a waste of time and talent would I be if I invested my entire life for other young men and neglected my 3 girls? And so as much as I wanted to be here with you guys this morning, that's part of that, right? Look, that little girl is going to come across the finish line for the very first time in her life. And she's going to look over and she's going to see her dad. I'm not always going to be able to do that. There's going to be certain times as a coach, as an AD, that she's going to have to realize I can't be at everything. But when you can sacrifice and when you can be there, you need to. And so again, going back to that coach I talked about, it's that guy right there, Don McAvoy. And seeing examples like him, taking a step back, and still now getting to do what he loves. It's not about the title you have, but it's about what you are entrusted to do, being responsible for that. So again, this is I was going through this whole slideshow, putting it together, and realized at the very end of it, I hadn't updated. It still had like Covenant helmets on it, and it didn't stand out as being off. So I think I have the right email address up there now. Feel free to shoot me a text, call me, email me, come to Waco, bring your wife. She can play at Magnolia all day, and we'll go hang out and shoot guns or something. But if you want to grab lunch anytime, just give me a holler. Be more than happy to share. So thank you guys.
All right, we're going to take a